I still remember that sound, the sharp sting of her hand across my face. It wasn't just a slap. It was years of silence, love, and trust breaking all at once. My daughter-in-law, Emma, stood there in the middle of my living room, breathing hard, her eyes full of anger I couldn't understand. She was holding out her hand, and in that trembling voice she said, "Give me the house keys." Now, for a second, I thought she was joking. I had just made her favorite pie that morning. We were supposed to have dinner together like a family. But something in her eyes told me this wasn't about food. This was about power. I was 70, a widow, living in the house my husband and I built brick by brick. Every corner of it had his fingerprints. The porch swing he fixed every spring. The kitchen he painted in soft yellow because he said it made me smile. And now this girl, the woman my son had married, was standing there demanding it like it was hers. I could feel my heart pounding as I said, "Emma, what's going on? Where's David?" She didn't answer. She just crossed her arms and said, "He's done talking. This is our home now. You need to leave." My body went cold. David, my son. My only son. The boy I raised after his father died, who used to say I was his whole world. He was letting this happen. I tried calling out his name, hoping he'd step in, stop this madness. But the house was silent, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator, and my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. I looked at Emma again, and I could tell she wasn't bluffing. Her jaw was tight. Her hands were shaking, but her eyes were set. And then she said something that still haunts me. "Don't make this harder than it has to be. You've lived your life. It's our turn now." I don't remember dropping the keys. I don't remember walking out that door. But I remember the pain, the disbelief, the betrayal. I remember sitting on the porch, watching the sun go down, realizing that everything I had, my family, my love, my home, had just been taken from me by the very people I lived for. And as the night fell, one thought kept echoing in my mind. If they thought I was weak because I was old, they were about to learn just how strong regret can make a mother. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in my car, parked across the street from the house that used to be mine. The porch light was still on, the same light my husband had fixed years ago so I'd never come home in the dark. Now it wasn't my home anymore. I could see shadows moving inside, Emma's laughter echoing faintly through the open window, my son's voice softer, uncertain. For a moment, I thought maybe he'd look out, see me sitting there, and come running. But he didn't. He had made his choice. And I had lost everything. When the night air turned cold, I drove to an old motel outside town. The kind of place where nobody asks questions. I paid for one night with the few dollars I had left in my purse. As I lay there on the stiff bed, staring at the ceiling, I replayed everything in my mind. How had I gone from raising a kind boy to watching him turn into a stranger? What did she do to him? I used to think love was unbreakable, that a mother's heart could survive anything. But sitting in that cheap room, wrapped in silence, I realized something else. Love isn't always gentle. Sometimes it hardens you. Sometimes love makes you fight. The next morning, I went back to the house, not to confront them, but to see. I parked far enough so they wouldn't notice me and watched as Emma walked out to the mailbox, wearing one of my old shawls. My husband's picture used to hang on that porch wall. Now it was gone. She had erased us. And when she smiled, texting someone, I saw a flash of something cold in her face, satisfaction. Not love. Not family. Power. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about the house. She wanted control. Over David. Over everything we built. I drove straight to the lawyer's office. My late husband's old friend, Mr. Collins. When I told him what happened, he just shook his head slowly. "I warned you years ago, Margaret. You should have never put the deed in joint ownership." My heart sank. She already had half the house legally, and now she had all of it emotionally. But then he looked at me and said, "There are still ways to fight back quietly." And for the first time since that slap, I felt something other than pain. I felt purpose. That night, I wrote a letter. Not to Emma, not to David, but to myself. It said, "You will not let them break you. You will not beg. You will watch, you will wait, and when the time is right, you'll make them understand what it means to lose something you took for granted." I folded that note and kept it in my purse. And as I fell asleep, I could almost hear my husband's voice whispering, "That's my girl." Because they thought I was done. But I was just getting started. The next few days, I disappeared from their lives completely. No calls. No visites. Not a single message. If they thought throwing me out would make me crawl back, they were wrong. I stayed silent, calm, invisible. And in that silence, I found power. I rented a small apartment in an older part of town. 1 bedroom, peeling paint, and a leaky faucet. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Every morning, I'd walk to the same diner down the street, order a cup of coffee, and sit by the window. From there, I'd write letters. Not to anyone in particular, just thoughts. Memories. Regrets. Writing helped me breathe again. But even while trying to heal, something in me refused to let go. A question kept echoing in my head. Who is she really? Emma came into our lives out of nowhere. She had no family around, no background she ever talked about. My son said she'd had a rough childhood. But rough how? She was smart, charming, perfectly polite, until she got what she wanted. One morning, as I stirred my coffee, a familiar voice said, "Mrs. Harris?" I turned around. It was Clara, my old neighbor from the next street. She looked surprised to see me. We talked for a while. I told her I'd moved out, but I didn't say why. Then Clara said something that made my heart stop. She had seen Emma before, years ago, in another town. Not as a teacher or nurse like she claimed, but working at a small law office. And she wasn't Emma then, she was Emily Grant. That night I couldn't sleep. I searched through old boxes, receipts, and papers I'd saved. My son had mentioned Emma once helped him with some legal paperwork before they got married. Suddenly it all made sense. She knew about the property laws, the joint ownership, the trust fund. This wasn't coincidence. It was calculation. The next day, I went to see Mr. Collins again. He confirmed that some of our old financial documents had been accessed months before I even knew who she was. She had planned it all, down to every signature, every sweet smile. When I left his office, my knees felt weak. The woman who slapped me, who called me useless, who turned my own son against me, had been preparing this for years. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. Instead, I smiled. Because I finally knew who I was dealing with. Over the next few weeks, I started showing up at places I knew they might see me. The grocery store near their house, the church on Sundays, the farmer's market. Every time Emma saw me, she stiffened just a little, pretending not to notice. That was enough for me. I wanted her to know I was still there, not broken, not gone, just watching. Then one afternoon, something unexpected happened. My son came to see me. He looked tired, his shirt wrinkled, his eyes dull. "Mom," he said quietly. I shouldn't have let things go that far. I wanted to hug him, but I didn't. Instead, I just nodded. "It's all right, David. We all make choices." He hesitated. "Emma doesn't like me visiting. She says it keeps reopening old wounds." I looked at him for a long time. "Son," I said softly. "Sometimes people say that because they're afraid of being seen for who they really are." He didn't answer, but I saw the confusion in his eyes. A tiny crack. That night, I started my quiet revenge. Not through anger, through kindness. I baked his favorite pie, the one his father used to love, and sent it over with a small note. "For the boy who still lives inside you." A week later, I sent over one of his childhood photo albums. No message, just the album. And slowly, I saw it working. David began calling again, small talks at first, then longer. He wanted to visit me alone. But Emma wasn't having it. One evening, she came to my apartment. No warning. She stood at the door, that same cold look in her eyes. "What do you think you're doing?" she hissed. I stayed calm. "I'm just being a mother." Her jaw clenched. "Stay away from us, or you'll regret it." And then she left, slamming the door so hard the frame shook. But what she didn't know was that she'd made her biggest mistake. Because right before she turned away, her phone screen lit up, and I saw a name flash on it. A name that I recognized. It wasn't my son's. It was Mark, lawyer's office. The same office she once worked at. That was the night everything changed for me. I realized I wasn't just dealing with a manipulative woman. I was dealing with a con. And if she thought she could play games with me, she'd soon learn. I could play them better. As I stood by my window, watching her car drive off into the darkness, I whispered to myself, "You wanted my house, Emma, but you never understood whose home it really was." Because the real fight hadn't even started yet. And this time I wasn't fighting for a house. I was fighting for my son's soul. And for the truth. A few days passed, and the silence around me began to hum with meaning. Every instinct in me said something was about to happen. I could feel it. One afternoon, I was sitting by my window when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, a man stood there in a suit. He held a briefcase and looked uncomfortable. "Mrs. Harris?" he asked. "Yes. I'm from Mark Taylor's office. You might remember the name." My stomach turned. "Yes," I said quietly. He nodded, looking almost sorry. "I shouldn't be here, but I thought you should know. There's been activity around your property documents. Someone's been trying to transfer ownership through a trust under your son's name." I stared at him. "Who?" He hesitated. "Your daughter-in-law." It wasn't shock that hit me, it was confirmation. The puzzle pieces fell into place like dominoes. She wasn't just after my house. She wanted it legally, so when I died it would all go to her without my son even realizing. I thanked the man. And as he left, I sat down slowly on the couch. For a long moment, I said nothing. The only sound was the old clock ticking on the wall. Then I smiled, not out of joy, but with the calm of someone who finally sees the end of a storm. That evening, I called my son. "David," I said softly. "I need you to come over tomorrow. There's something I want to show you." He agreed, though I could hear the hesitation in his voice. The next morning, I went to my lawyer. Not Mr. Collins this time, but a younger woman I trusted deeply. We drafted a new will. Every word was deliberate. Every clause thoughtful. And one sentence held everything. The Harris property will pass to the person who has shown genuine care and loyalty in the last year. I didn't name anyone. I left it to evidence, not blood. When David arrived the next day, he looked nervous. "Mom, what's going on?" I gestured to the couch. "Sit down, sweetheart." I slid an envelope toward him. "This came to me yesterday. I want you to read it." He read it silently, his eyes widening with every line. Then he whispered, "This can't be true." "It is," I said softly. "The woman you married, she's not who she pretends to be." He shook his head. "No, Mom. She loves me." I leaned forward. "Then ask yourself, David. Why does she want everything I've worked for? Why does she need control over what's already yours?" His hands trembled. He wanted to deny it, but doubt had already found a home in his heart. He left in silence, saying he needed to think. That night I couldn't sleep. The house felt too quiet, the air too still. I knew something was coming. And I was right. At midnight, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You shouldn't have involved David," it read. Then another one followed. "You'll lose everything." I didn't respond. I turned off the phone, made myself a cup of tea, and sat by the window. The moonlight fell across my face, soft and pale. I whispered, "You already took everything, Emma. Except my peace." 2 days later, David called. His voice was shaking. "Mom, I found out," he said quietly. "What did you find?" "She's been meeting that lawyer behind my back. I saw the messages." There was silence. Then he whispered, "I don't even know who she is anymore." "Come home, David," I said. "Just come home." That evening, I opened the door to see my son standing there, exhausted, broken, but finally awake. He walked in slowly and sat down at the table where we'd shared so many meals years ago. "I'm so sorry, Mom," he said. "I should have believed you." I reached across the table, taking his hand. "It's all right. You needed to see it for yourself." Then the doorbell rang again. When I opened it, Emma was there. Her hair was a mess, her eyes red. "Where is he?" she demanded. I stepped aside. "Inside." She marched in, looking around the house like she still owned it. When her eyes met mine, I saw the fear behind her anger. "You think you can turn him against me?" she hissed. I didn't answer. I just turned to my son. "David, you have something to say." He looked at her, his voice trembling but firm. "It's over, Emma. I know everything." For a second, she froze. and then she laughed. "You're pathetic," she said, grabbing her purse. "You both deserve each other." She turned toward the door, but stopped when she saw an envelope sitting on the table. It was the new will. Her face changed. "What's this?" she asked sharply. "Proof," I said quietly, "that I may be old, but I'm not blind." She tried to snatch it, but David stopped her. "Don't," he said. Her eyes flashed with anger. "You'll regret this," she spat, and stormed out. The house fell silent again. David sank into the chair, his hands covering his face. "I can't believe I let this happen." I walked over and placed a hand on his shoulder. "It's not the end, sweetheart. Sometimes, we have to lose something to see what truly matters." He looked up at me, eyes full of tears. "What happens now?" I smiled softly. "Now we start over." But even as I said it, I knew the story wasn't over yet. Because a woman like Emma never truly disappears, not until she's finished what she started. And something in my heart told me she wasn't finished. I sat on the porch that night, the same porch where I once used to watch sunsets with David when life felt calm, peaceful. The air was cool, but inside me there was a storm. My daughter-in-law's words kept echoing in my mind. "This is my house now." I had spent my whole life building this home, every corner filled with memories. Now that same place felt haunted, not by ghosts, but by betrayal. That evening I got a call. It was Mrs. Graham, a neighbor and old friend. "Mary," she said quietly, "I think you should come by the real estate office tomorrow. I overheard something about your son's wife putting your house on the market." My heart dropped. I couldn't breathe for a moment. I felt my chest tighten as if my whole world was being ripped apart one more time. The next morning, I went to that office. There it was, my house, my name scratched off the ownership form, replaced with hers. My daughter-in-law had forged the documents. My son's signature copied. I walked out of that office trembling but calm. The kind of calm that comes before a storm. That night, I called my son. He sounded distant again, but I asked him to come over. "It's important, Michael. For your mother. Please." When they arrived, she walked in first, confident, cold, like she owned the place. My son followed, looking like a shadow of himself. I looked at them both. "Sit down," I said softly. Then I pulled out the folder, copies of the property documents, the lawyer's report, everything. My voice didn't shake. "You tried to take my house, the same house where your husband took his first steps, where I stayed up every night when he had a fever, the home you wanted to erase me from." My daughter-in-law's face turned pale. My son's mouth fell open. "Mom, I didn't know," he whispered. "Oh, you knew something," I said, holding his gaze. "But you chose to stay quiet because silence was easier than standing up for your mother." He broke down. Tears rolled down his cheeks. "I thought she just wanted us to move in, Mom. I didn't know she was doing this." For a moment, I saw the boy I had raised, confused, lost, scared. I wanted to hold him, but the wound was too deep. Then I turned to her. "Do you know what it's like to give everything, your love, your trust, and have it thrown back in your face?" She didn't answer. Her hands trembled. "You could have had everything," I continued. "A mother who loved you like her own. But instead you chose greed. You chose betrayal." I stood up and handed her a document. Not the house deed this time, but the new one. "I took my house back," I said firmly. "And I filed a report. The police will handle the forgery. But I'm giving you one last choice. Walk away with what little dignity you have left, or let them take you away." Her face turned red with shame and fear. She stood up, grabbed her purse, and ran out without another word. My son stayed behind, silent. He didn't know what to say, and honestly, I didn't either. I poured us both a cup of coffee and sat down. After a long silence, he finally whispered, "I'm sorry, Mom." I looked at him, my heart still broken, but soft enough to forgive. "You have a good heart, Michael," I said. "But sometimes love blinds us. Don't ever let anyone use that against you again." He nodded, tears in his eyes. Can I stay tonight?" I smiled faintly. "You'll always have a room here. But you'll have to rebuild what you broke. Trust doesn't come easy." That night, for the first time in months, I slept peacefully. I had lost a lot, but I had gained something too, strength. The kind of strength that only comes after heartbreak. Weeks passed. My daughter-in-law moved out of town, leaving behind nothing but whispers. My son visited often, bringing groceries, fixing things, slowly earning his place back in my heart. Then one afternoon, he came by with flowers. "Mom," he said with a nervous smile, "there's someone I want you to meet someday. But only when you're ready." I laughed softly. "I'll hold you to that." When he left, I sat by the window, watching the sun set, golden and quiet, like peace had finally returned home. And just as I closed my eyes, I whispered to myself, sometimes revenge isn't about hurting back. It's about standing tall, reclaiming what's yours, and letting the pain make you wiser, not colder. I smiled, because for the first time, I wasn't the woman who got slapped. I was the woman who stood back up and walked away stronger. A week later, as I was organizing my papers, I found an old letter in David's handwriting, hidden in the back of a drawer. It read, "If you ever feel alone, remember, this home is your soul. Protect it, protect your heart, and never let anyone take away the peace we built together." I looked up at the ceiling and whispered, "I didn't let you down, David." And somehow, I felt he was smiling back.